everybody. Merry Christmas. How you all doing? All right. Okay, I put this off long enough. I'm not gonna say I'll be able to do it today, but at some point during this year, I gotta learn how to do, like, a somersault or a backflip or something onto this thing without critically hurting myself. So, I don't know. I guess we'll just do, like, a Tekking backfall. Yeah, there we go. We'll do that today. It's not much. If anybody out there knows how to do, like, an actual, like, somersaults, you know, I mean, I have some clearance in this room. I have some space where I can run and do that. I knew a guy once that could do, like, a bunch of backflips, like, successive backflips and handstands. He was crazy. It was awesome. But, you know, I don't know if I could get to that level, but at some point, man, that'd be cool. All right. Hi, everybody. How are you doing? Tekking101 here alongside Barry. Also a dragon. Also a Christmas tree because it's Orthodox Christmas. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Today's video, we have some alliteration going on. I love my alliteration. Also, excuse my voice. It's not up to 100% yet, but we're getting there, okay? So today's video is about Momo's moment, which is not very specific because there's a lot of characters in anime named Momo. Are we talking about Momo from Bleach, Momo from My Hero Academia, Mo Sizlak from The Simpsons, which that's an anime, sure. Actually, complete non sequitur, but I'll bring it up anyway because it's a non sequitur in The Simpsons, which is one of the funniest jokes in that show to me. And it's just one of those random little gags that last like 5 seconds and it's funny. So there's a scene when there's an episode where Homer ends up marrying 2 women. So he has Marge and he also has this other woman that he's married or whatever, and there's a scene at Moe's bar when Lenny's like, gee, Homer, I thought somebody with 2 wives would be happy, and Carl is like, nah, you're thinking of someone with 2 knives, and then just cut to Moe holding 2 giant butcher knives like, I gotta tell you, this is pretty terrific. Yeah! It's just like, it's just funny. I don't know. It's funnier the more times you watch it to see the glee on Moe's face. Like, 2 knives? Yeah, it's great. Okay. So anyway, yeah, no, we're talking about Momonosuke Kozuki from One Piece, okay? Because we got a lot of interesting stuff coming up with him. The last few chapters, he's basically been attempting to wrestle an entire island and push it somewhere else, okay? And this goes beyond just the idea of, like, this one moment where he's trying to push an island to save everybody. From the grander scope of this, you can look at it like this is the beginning of Momo's feats that might very well rival or possibly even surpass his father. Because the whole thing about Oden, like literally the first chapter of the flashback that we had with Oden was the retainer of the Kozuki family, I think Bonzenburo was his name, and he was reading off all of the exploits that Oden had, you know, performed throughout his life to Sukiyake, and he's like, well, of course, you know, as soon as he was born, he threw his wet nurse across the hospital room, and then he killed a bear with a boulder at age 4, and then he led like a freaking Yakuza rebellion at like age 9. He redirected an entire river at age 14. You know, he did all these crazy things throughout his life. He sliced the mountain god in half at age 18, and then eventually he went off to join Whitebeard's crew and then Roger's crew and, you know, found Laugh Tale, you know, one of the things only a very few amount of people in the world have done. And so Oden has done all these crazy things. And the idea is that Momonosuke feels like he cannot measure up to his father. Because when your father is somebody like Oden, who's absolutely, like, literally larger than life in that respect, where he's done all these crazy things, like, Momo is only 8 years old. Well, technically now, physically, he's 28 because he was aged up by Shinobu, but, you know, mentally, he's only 8 years old. And so by that age, you know, Oden was already killing grizzly bears and stuff. I don't think Momonosuke has killed a single grizzly bear in his life. I might be wrong on this, but the point is Momonosuke's like, everybody expects great things from me. Not just great things, people expect like transcendently amazing things from me. Like, you know, the Oden pretty much redefined existence in some concepts, and like, oh, and Momo is just like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. So can you imagine having a father like Oden, all right? And it's not even like, well, Oden was around a little bit for Momonosuke's childhood, you know, but then he died, and so now he doesn't really have the guidance of his father anymore. He can't like hide behind him or anything like that. It's kind of on his own for him to live up to this, and to the point where he literally discarded his childhood, where Shinobu aged him up to age 28, but Momonosuke, he will never be able to go back and relive his childhood. He literally gave up his childhood in order to defeat Kaido, or even like have a chance at defeating Kaido, and it's a good thing that he did, because if he did not do that, then he would not be able to, wrestle Onigashima and push it away, because he wouldn't have control over the flame clouds like he does right now. He still doesn't really understand it completely, but at least he has the he at least has the ability to manipulate the flame clouds that Kaido has. When he was just a tiny little dragon, he wouldn't have been able to do that, right? So he pretty much had to do it, but that's like a big thing that he did. Now, there's some discussions on whether or not, maybe he could go back and relive his childhood. Like, for example, Jori Bonnie's devil fruit exists, which is some kind of like aging fruit that allows her to switch through ages, so maybe it's allowing Momonosuke to do the same thing. I'm not really sure how that would work, but I guess devil fruits kind of give you all these different possibilities, and so I guess at some point it would be feasible if Bonnie used her ability on Momonosuke, maybe he could go back, but for right now he's basically stuck as a 28-year-old, okay? So, one of the big things, though, that would definitely go on the resume of Momonosuke is, okay, he bench pressed an entire island. Basically the same thing Kaido did. A lot of Momo's feats are going to be directly connected to Kaido. Like one of the first things that Momo did after turning into a giant dragon was bite Kaido on the tail, and it looked like it hurt Kaido quite a bit, right? Now, Momo doesn't know how to do Boro breath right now, or the lightning breath, or the giant wind scythe blade breath, or whatever the hell. I mean, he might be able to learn that stuff eventually, because they basically share the exact same devil fruit. But just the fact that Momo was able, I mean, he didn't overcome his courage right away in one moment, and that's the great thing that I like that Oda is spinning this, okay? Because in a lot of fiction, you might have a moment where a character just decides to toss away their cowardice and become brave, and that's the turning point for their character, and for the rest of the story, they're a different person, okay? Now, that's interesting depending on whichever story you're talking about, but, with One Piece, I don't think it works as well. Look at Usopp, for instance. Sometimes people complain that, like, Usopp, even despite going through all of these crazy adventures with Luffy, he's still as cowardly as he is. At this point in the story, after traveling to all these islands and defeating all these opponents, at this point, Usopp should be like, I'm super confident, I am a brave warrior of the sea, I'm not a coward anymore. And Usopp definitely, when the chips are down and it's like, okay, he has to, like, nut up or shut up, he will nut up, exactly, okay? That's what Usopp does. But, like, the idea is, like, how come he's still such a coward after defeating all these really strong opponents and dealing with all this stuff all throughout the Grand Line? It's because becoming brave and tossing away your fear is not something that just happens in a single moment in your life. It's not like, Momonosuke turns into a dragon and Luffy is kind of giving him some words of encouragement, like, come on, Momo, you can do this, you can attack Kaido. And Momo's like, I can! And then he bites Kaido and he's like, okay, Luffy, I am forever brave now. You gave me words of encouragement, and in the span of 5 seconds, I am a different human being. Let's do this! That's not really how humans are, all right? If you're a cowardly person and you have a moment where you have to, like, okay, I have to do this thing, I have to do it, and then you carry it out and you succeed, it's not like for the rest of your life, it's like, all right, I'm no longer going to be a coward. I'm not held down by that for the rest of my days. Like, no, I mean, like, it's something that takes time, okay? And I think Oda is doing that pretty well here, where Momonosuke is capable of overcoming his fear. He is capable of attacking Kaido, even when he's given the job of, like, Yamato's like, make sure the island doesn't fall on the flower capital, and Momo's like, I have no idea how to do that, and Yamato's like, just use the flame clouds, you'll be fine, and then she leaves. Momo's like, all right, I don't know how to do this, but I better figure it out, and I don't have anybody else around to help me, so if I don't do this, literally thousands of people, tens of thousands, everybody in the flower capital could die, plus everybody on Onigashima, so I better make this work somehow, And so the method that Momonosuke basically came up with was like, okay, I'm never going to be able to create enough flame clouds, like the same level of Kaido, and, like, wrap them around the entire island. That just isn't going to happen. So instead what I'm going to do is grab the flaming clouds and then, basically Kaido's flaming clouds he already created and tow them somewhere else. Now, there are some problems with that still, because, like, if Kaido is defeated by Luffy, which, by the way, I just want to say that dynamic itself is very interesting in One Piece or in a shonen manga in general, where it's usually about like, okay, the main character's fighting against the main enemy of the arc. He's going to finish him off as fast as possible. That's actually a detriment right now, where it's like we have to work. Like, it's almost like they're expecting Luffy to win, but it's like if he wins too fast, then the island's going to fall and everyone's going to die. So it's like Yamato and Momonosuke are like, okay, Luffy, make sure you win, but like, if you want to take some hits, and take a breather every once in a while, that's okay too, because it's like that sort of interesting dynamic that we don't really see in a lot in other arcs of One Piece and a lot of shonen in general, where there's like a reverse timer going on, where it's like normally the timer is like you have to defeat the main enemy in less than 10 minutes or the whole island explodes, but now it's reversed where it's like if you defeat the enemy within 10 minutes, the whole island explodes. So it's like, okay, yeah, we'll see how this goes there, all right? But after Momo succeeds in this, which I'm sure he will, and it's not going to be perfect, because he's not really used to doing this kind of stuff with his dragon form, but, like, I can imagine him at least towing Onigashima away, and it's like, okay, it's a fair distance from the flower capital now, and they're in the middle of the Udon region, which is in the middle of, like, wasteland or whatever, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to try to, like, slowly drag the island down, now, so he's pulled it away from the flower capital, now he's going to try to drag it down to the ground. And probably when he's in the process of dragging it to the ground, that's when Luffy's going to defeat Kaido. Kaido's going to get knocked out. The flame clouds are going to disappear. And Momo's like, what? No, it's... He's going to try to hold it up as much as possible. And it hits the ground and it's like, boom. And at that point, maybe Yamato would have frozen all of the bombs and explosives and gunpowder and TNT in the armory. So it's like, oh no, it's going to fall. Boom. We're good! Yamato, we good? We're good, Momo. Okay, cool. And then it will forever go down in history. Momonosuke Kozuki, the man that turned into a giant peach-colored dragon and bench-pressed an entire island. This is the feeling that I have that, like, okay, Momo is an adult now, and just like how Oden traveled with Roger's crew, there's a possibility I could see that Momonosuke might very well travel with the Straw Hats. Maybe not, forever, but at least to Laugh Tale, considering they're in the last portion of their journey, and that's kind of exactly what happened with Oden. When Roger ran into Oden on Whitebeard's crew, they only had about a year or so left on their journey when they had to reach Laugh Tale. Like, by the time Roger met Oden, Roger had already traveled the entirety of the Grand Line, except for Laugh Tale. He'd already gone to Lodestar Island. He'd already gone to all these different places, Sky Islands, islands under the ocean. He's been around the world many times at that point. But this was their final journey. And Roger's like, I need Oden in order to translate these poneglyphs for just 1 year, and then I can, truly find the last island in the world, right, before I die as well, because Roger knew he was going to die. So there's a theory out there. It's like, well, I mean, this theory's been around forever. It's just like, okay, is Momonosuke going to travel with the Straw Hats? And up until he was aged up by Shinobu's ability, the idea was maybe Momonosuke, and possibly even Otama, were going to join the Straw Hat Pirates as sort of like the apprentice pirates, kind of fulfilling like Shanks and Buggy's role on Roger's crew back in the day, right? So I don't think that's going to happen anymore now, at least not in that dynamic, but it's possible that Momonosuke might very well travel with the Straw Hats to Laugh Tale to see the same thing that his father saw. So Momonosuke, and obviously Momonosuke cannot read the poneglyphs. The reason Roger won in Oden was not just because of his strength, that was one reason, but also because he could read poneglyphs. Momonosuke cannot read poneglyphs. He even mentioned as such, like, his father passed away before he had a chance to pass on that knowledge, like all the Kozukis did, okay? So that wouldn't be the reason they would take Momonosuke with them, but, if he's a really powerful samurai now, and kind of following along in Usopp's footsteps, he wants to be brave, he wants to, learn how to use his Devil Fruit ability, but also just the idea that Momonosuke read Oden's journal, and I'm sure Oden, and I made a whole video about Oden's journal, I'm sure Oden did not write in the journal, like, this is exactly what we found at Laugh Tale, this is exactly what the ancient weapons are. He alluded to it, but he didn't actually write it down in the book. So since Momonosuke read that book, Yamato did as well. They're both very invested in what exactly the One Piece is, what is on Laugh Tale, what are all these secrets that Oden discovered. And I could see Yamato properly joining the Straw Hat Pirates forevermore. But for Momonosuke, it might just be a thing where it's like, okay, I cannot join your crew permanently, Luffy. Like, I can't do that forever because I have a country that needs me. They need me to be their shogun, to be their ruler. For a while there, I was thinking that Momonosuke was just going to stay at Wano. He was never going to travel with the Straw Hats Pirates, period. And then I realized this option. It's just like, just because you travel with the Straw Hats doesn't mean you're going to have to join their crew and you have to make a commitment, right, forevermore. That's not how it works. Yamato could properly join, and then maybe Momonosuke could ask Luffy, like, Luffy, I want to go with you. You guys are heading to the same island my father went to, right? And Luffy's like, yeah, we're going to be going to Laugh Tale. I don't know how much longer we're going to get there, but it seems like we're maybe reaching it soon. And so Momonosuke's like, I would like to travel with you for that remaining time. I do have to return to Wano. I do have to rule my people at some point and be, basically, honestly, we could have Hiyori, because is Hiyori going to be the next shogun? Kind of break down that border between, like, women can't be samurai, women can't, lead the country. We can have that moment where Hiyori could rule the country instead of Momo, or they could rule together. But the idea is this actually works great, because then you could have a situation where Hiyori is like the acting shogun while Momonosuke leaves for like however long it is for the Straw Hats to get to Laugh Tale, comes back, and then Momonosuke and Hiyori could maybe rule together. Because Hiyori, and I made a whole video about her as well recently, where it's like Hiyori knows her people, okay? She's lived in the slums of Wano for most of her life. She lived through that 20-year gap with Kawamatsu and then Denjiro, and she's beloved by everybody as Komurasaki, right? So she knows her people. Momonosuke is still, mentally 8, and he has a lot of stuff he needs to learn about how to rule a country, right? And so I could see that. I could see Hiyori taking the reins while Momonosuke travels to kind of like, learn stuff about the world, the same thing that Oden did, and then he comes back and Momonosuke is maybe a little bit more mature. But he still understands that he doesn't have the wherewithal to rule an entire nation, especially not Wano. And so he's like, okay, we're the Kozukis, so we have to rule. But Hiyori, you take the reins, and then I'll rule alongside you and pick stuff up as we go. And so maybe it could be something like that. Also, provided none of the scabbards die, you would have Kinemon, you would have Denjiro. Which, by the way, what's up with Denjiro right now? We have no idea where Denjiro is at. I keep forgetting this. Like, there was one panel, like, a few dozen chapters ago where Denjiro was, like, running off to some location, but we have no idea where Denjiro is. Like, literally all the other scabbards are accounted for. Kinemon and Okiku are in the attic alongside Kanjuro. They're all defeated. They had that moment with Usopp in the last chapter, though, that was very emotional. We have Izo that arrived there as well. Ashura Doji, he was explodified by the fake Odins, by Kanjuro, so he's on the ground unconscious right now. Kawamatsu is with Hyo in the festival stage. And then we have Denjiro, who we don't know where he's at right now. And then Inuarashi and Nekomamushi finished their fights with Perospero and Jack, respectively. And so, yeah, I'm probably forgetting one of the scabbards right now, but my point, Raizo's still locked in pitch combat with Fuku Rokuju, but Denjiro, we have no idea what he's up to right now. So, yeah, I think Denjiro might be doing something with Hiyori, arrive where she is, and Orochi is there as well, and we'll see what'll happen with that, right? But yeah, basically, yeah, I just wanted to ask you guys the question, like, what do you think Momonosuke is going to do? Do you think he's going to stay in Wano after the arc, to be a shogun, or would he want to travel with the Straw Hats just temporarily to see the world? I guess Otama could maybe join as well, because we're kind of entering the final saga of this story, and it's like, okay, we could do this like the Straw Hats have their own method of doing things, or we could do it like the similar way that Roger did to kind of give a parallel to their journeys. And once again, I want to reiterate, just because Roger became King of the Pirates and Luffy wants to become King of the Pirates, and yes, there are a lot of similarities between them, the Straw Hat, like a physical similarity, as well as their appearance, because we saw Roger when he was younger, he looked a lot like Luffy. We have like physical, things that are very similar between them, and then just their emotions, things that how they act are very similar. That doesn't mean they have to carry out the exact same adventure. So just because Roger recruited Oden doesn't mean Luffy has to recruit Momonosuke. Just because Roger had apprentice pirates doesn't mean the Straw have apprentice pirates hanging around, right? It doesn't have to be the same thing, but if Oda were to go that direction, I'm like, okay, it's very poetic and it's representative of like the inherited will. So it's not exactly one of those things that I'd really be against. It's just like one way or the other, and either way I'd be fine with it. Stuff that would be maybe very heavy-handed, like that theory that is pretty much debunked at this point, but that theory for a while that like Roger had the Gamu Gamu no Mi before Luffy had it. It was Roger's fruit the whole time. That was a theory that was around for a very long time. And it's like, I would would prefer something not like that intense with it, with like, okay, it's like they look the same and they have a similar personality and they both want to become king of the pirates, they both have the will of D, and they both had the exact same devil fruit, and they both followed the exact same route, which they didn't. Some of the islands they visited, they would have to be the same islands, like the Saboti Archipelago, Fishman Island, Skypiea, but, you know, they didn't follow the exact same path that Roger followed, okay? Like, the Straw Hats went to some different islands than Roger's crew did, okay? So, you know, similar, carrying on that inherited will theme of One Piece that's all over the place, but different enough that it's different. Yeah. And I mean, also, it just seems like something Momonosuke would want to do. Because, yes, he bit Kaido on the tail, and yes, he bench pressed an island, but, you know, that's stuff Oden could do in his sleep. I feel like Momonosuke wants to rack up more experience to make himself worthy of being the shogun. Now, we saw everybody at the Udon prison bowing down before Momonosuke there. And also during the scene at the festival hall when Momonosuke declares, you know, I am Kozuki Momonosuke, my father was Oden, you know. So the people of Wano are already swayed to follow Momonosuke. Like, they understand he's a child. They understand he's not going to be the same as his father right away, right? But I think for Momonosuke, he feels like he's not good enough yet. And I think going out and traveling the same way that his father did, that will give him the confidence. And he's like, okay, I've traveled with the Straw Hats. I got to see the world. Now I'm ready. Now I'm ready to sit on the throne like my father should have been and my grandfather before me and everybody. And I am the one that will be the shogun of Wano. I could see that Momonosuke's, like, logic here, so he would probably maybe travel with the Straw Hat crew in the future, but I guess we'll just have to see to find out. Alright, well, anyway, thanks for watching the video, everybody. Sorry once again for my voice. Hopefully that'll be better in a couple of days. Thanks for watching the video. Tekking101 and Barry, signing out. Merry Christmas!